Before Jesus ascended, he promised the disciples that he was going to send them the helper, the advocate, or the comforter. That sounds like a wonderful, amazing, even cozy kind of promise. It's an image that we like. We like this idea that the Holy Spirit is comforting, and we usually illustrate it with a dove. There's something graceful and peaceful and inspiring about the image of a dove. I mean, we release them at weddings and at funerals sometimes. There's something about that freedom of a bird in flight that just brings peace. And I know where that image comes from. It comes from Jesus' baptism. The scriptures say that on the day that he was baptized, the Spirit descended onto Jesus in the form of a dove. How gentle, how lovely. But the arrival of the Spirit on the day of Pentecost looks entirely different than that. This is one of those things that the Wednesday morning Bible study group highlighted as we talked together this week. For Pentecost, we get two images of the Spirit: a mighty rushing wind and fire. Take a moment and sit with that. Think about what happens in the face of a mighty or violent rushing wind. Think about the damage that winds can do, how they can pick up heavy objects and toss them around like children's toys. Think about how the wind can turn even small objects like raindrops into stinging projectiles. A little wind, a light breeze, can be delightful, but a lot of wind can transform a landscape completely. The same thing is true of the other dominant image for today, the Spirit of Pentecost as fire. A little bit is great. We can do amazing things with fire. But we also know that fire can be incredibly destructive. We've seen the devastation caused by wildfires in the rainforest and in Australia. And this week we've seen fires in American cities as people cry out for justice. All of this makes me think that maybe we ought to be a little more careful when we ask the Holy Spirit to show up for things. Maybe we should be careful because the Spirit's arrival has a way of radically changing the world around us. And even though we trust that God is working to bring lasting justice and peace, and using the Spirit to do it, there's a very real chance that some of the things that we love may end up getting blown around or caught up in the flames. In fact, as Peter stands up to give a testimony to what the people are seeing and hearing, he draws on apocalyptic images from the Jewish histories, from the prophet Joel in particular. He quotes Joel and says, "In the last days it will be," God declares, "that I will pour out my Spirit on all flesh, that your sons and daughters will prophesy, your young men will see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams." So if you turn on the news lately, and it looks like the end of the world is going on all around you, take heart. Because though this may be painful, these are the birth pangs of a new creation. The Spirit will bring new life out of destruction, hope out of despair, and justice out of wrongdoing. You and I are going to be transformed in all this too. This is what St. Paul talks about when he mentions dying to sin and rising to Christ. That you and I are going to end up surrendering those parts of our lives that are captive to sin. Our own self-serving interests, our indifference to the suffering of our neighbors, and our refusal to recognize the image of God in the faces of those around us. It's all going to have to go. This work may well be painful, but it is necessary. And the promises of God hold true, that if we've been united with Jesus in a death like his, that we will also be united with him in a resurrection like his. Dear friends, If we don't need to fear the grave, then we also don't need to fear the work that the Spirit is doing. It's my prayer for each of us that we will see the Spirit transform our lives as individuals and as a wider society. That the Spirit will blow through the wilderness of our lives, through the wilderness of our hearts, and will kindle a new fire, one that burns with passion for justice, peace, and love. Dear friends, may the Spirit of Pentecost blow in your lives and raise you to new life, never to die again.